She extended her hand with a smile. He looked right through her, like she was invisible, irrelevant, beneath him. In 3 seconds, he destroyed her with a glance and a smirk. "The catering manager's in the kitchen," he said. His colleagues laughed. She was worth $340 million. He had no idea. But here's what he really didn't know. She wasn't just rich. She was ruthless when she needed to be. And by tomorrow, he'd be on his knees, begging for a meeting she'd never grant. This is the story of a handshake that cost a man everything. His company, his reputation, his legacy. And the black woman he underestimated? She didn't just win. She rewrote the rules entirely. You think you know how this ends? You don't. Because what happened next shocked everyone, including her. But before we dive in, I need to know something. Right now, someone watching this has felt invisible too. Maybe at work, maybe somewhere you deserved respect, but got dismissed instead. You're not alone in this. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country. Let's build something here. Let's remind each other we're seen, we matter, and our stories deserve to be heard. I'll be reading every single one. Amara Thompson, 28, stood in the Plaza Hotel ballroom feeling like she'd finally made it. Brooklyn-born, raised by her grandmother Esther in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, she'd clawed her way to this moment. Her tech company had just sold for $340 million. Tonight, she wasn't the scholarship kid or the only black face in the room. Tonight, she was a legitimate player. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above Manhattan's elite. Amara smoothed her simple black dress, watching venture capitalists and CEOs network over champagne. Her heart pounded with nervous energy. Then she saw him, Richard Caldwell, the CEO she'd been researching for months. His biotech company held revolutionary technology, but his financials showed cracks. With her capital and his innovation, they could build something extraordinary. Amara rehearsed her pitch silently, then moved through the crowd with purpose. Richard stood surrounded by men in expensive suits, laughing at someone's joke. She approached with confidence, extending her hand and a warm smile. What happened next would change everything. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Amara Thompson. I've been analyzing your company's portfolio, and I believe." Richard's eyes swept over her dismissively. He didn't extend his hand. Instead, he interrupted with a condescending smirk. "I'm sorry, we're having a private conversation here. The catering manager is in the kitchen if you're looking for her." His colleagues chuckled. One adjusted his tie uncomfortably. Most continued their conversations as if nothing happened. Amara's hand hung in the air, rejected. Heat flooded her face. The champagne glass in her other hand trembled slightly. She'd felt this sting before, being reduced to assumptions, stereotypes, invisibility, but never at this level. Not after everything she'd achieved. "I see," she said quietly, lowering her hand with dignity. "My mistake." She turned and walked away, her grandmother's voice echoing in her mind. "Hold your head high, baby girl." Across the room, David Chun, a respected investor, had witnessed everything. His eyes widened with recognition and horror. He knew exactly who Amara was, and what Richard had just done. Amara's penthouse overlooked Central Park, but tonight the view brought no comfort. She sat in darkness, still wearing her dress, mascara streaked down her cheeks. For the first time in 5 years, she let herself cry. Her assistant Maya brought chamomile tea and sat beside her in silence. "He didn't know," Maya offered gently. "He didn't care to know," Amara whispered. "He saw a black woman and decided I was the help. $340 million in my account, and he thought I was serving drinks." She thought about every racist incident on her journey upward. The investors who asked if she was the secretary. The banker who followed her around assuming she'd steal. The countless times her intelligence was questioned before she even spoke. Her phone buzzed against the glass coffee table. A news alert lit up the screen. Caldwell Biotech in financial crisis, desperately seeking emergency investment. Amara picked up her phone, tears drying on her face. Something shifted in her eyes. Pain transformed into something colder, sharper, strategic. Amara didn't sleep. She pulled up Caldwell Biotech's financials and dissected every number. By dawn, she understood Richard's desperation completely. 45 days until bankruptcy. Failed drug trials. Investors fleeing. His board circling like sharks. The technology was brilliant. The leadership was toxic. She made 4 phone calls. David Chen answered first. I was hoping you'd call. By noon, she'd assembled a consortium. For investors, each one she'd personally vetted. Each one who understood what she was building. Not just a business deal, but a reckoning. We're not saving Richard Caldwell, she told them on the conference call. We're saving 300 employees who did nothing wrong. And we're removing the rod at the top. David's voice came through carefully. Amara, the Caldwell family has old money connections. They'll fight back hard. Amara stared at her grandmother's photograph on the mantel. Esther's wise eyes seemed to look right through her. Let them try, Amara said, her voice steel-wrapped in silk. I didn't survive Brooklyn to be afraid of boardrooms. If you're feeling what Amara's feeling right now, that fire, that determination to prove everyone wrong, hit that like button. Because stories like this need to be shared. Someone in your life needs to hear this today. Maybe it's your sister, your friend, someone who's been counted out too many times. Share this with them. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You'll want to see how this plays out. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Richard Caldwell's office felt smaller every hour. His CFO had quit that morning via email. Coward. His largest investor pulled out before lunch. His father called him incompetent. You're destroying everything I built, Edmund Caldwell growled through the phone. Fix this. Now. Richard loosened his tie, feeling it choke him. He pulled up his computer and typed desperately, Thompson Ventures. The search results loaded. His stomach dropped. Forbes profile. Wall Street Journal features. A photograph of Amara at a charity gala, elegant and powerful, surrounded by tech industry titans. Amara Thompson, the quiet billionaire revolutionizing tech investment. For $0.2 billion in assets under management. Richard's hands trembled as the realization crashed over him. The woman he'd dismissed as catering staff controlled more wealth than his entire family. The woman whose hand he'd refused to shake could have saved his company with a single phone call. He ran to his private bathroom and vomited. His assistant knocked softly. Mr. Caldwell? Miss Thompson's office called. She said she'd be willing to meet tomorrow at 2. Richard's head snapped up, hope flooding through his panic. Maybe he could fix this. Richard called Amara's office 12 times that day. Each voicemail grew more desperate, his professional veneer cracking with each message. Ms. Thompson, Richard Caldwell here. I'd love to discuss potential synergies. Ms. Thompson, please, I think there was a misunderstanding at the summit. Amara, please call me back. I need to explain. Amara listened to each one with Maya. They said nothing, just let his desperation fill the room through the speakerphone. Meanwhile, Richard's world collapsed in slow motion. 3 more investors declined meetings. A Wall Street Journal article questioned his leadership. His wife asked pointed questions about their finances over dinner. His board called an emergency meeting. Across Manhattan, Amara assembled her consortium in a private conference room. No phones, no recordings. Just 5 brilliant minds dismantling Richard's empire with surgical precision. We offer $85 million for the core assets, Amara outlined. Enough to avoid complete bankruptcy. Not enough to save him. David nodded. Condition? Richard Caldwell resigns. No severance. Complete forfeiture. Then Richard's assistant called his cell, her voice shaking. Mr. Caldwell, it's your father. He collapsed. They're rushing him to Mount Sinai. Edmund Caldwell died at Mount Sinai Hospital 3 hours after arrival. Massive heart attack. The doctors said stress was a contributing factor. Richard sat in the hospital corridor, numb. His father's last words echoed. Fix this. He'd failed. The funeral filled St. Patrick's Cathedral. Manhattan's elite filled the pews, old money families, business titans, politicians. They came to honor Edmund's legacy, but Richard felt their judgment in every sympathetic glance. At the cemetery, Richard stood between his mother Catherine and his silent wife. Rain fell softly on expensive umbrellas. He watched his father's casket lower into the ground and felt his own life burying with it. Across the cemetery, partially hidden behind a monument, Amara watched. She wore black, her face obscured by an umbrella. She'd come because, despite everything, death reminded her of her own losses. Her grandmother Esther. The pain that never fully heals. She almost felt sorry for Richard. Almost. As mourners began dispersing, Catherine Caldwell walked directly toward Amara. The older white woman's eyes were red but clear. You're her, aren't you? Catherine said quietly. The woman my son disrespected. Catherine's hand trembled as she held her umbrella. I know what Richard did at that summit. David Chin told me. He's ashamed, as he should be. Amara said nothing, surprised by this confrontation at a funeral. I need you to understand something. Catherine continued, tears mixing with rain on her face. I marched in Selma in 1965. I believed in justice, in equality. Then I married into old money and watched it corrupt everything I valued. I tried to raise Richard differently, but privilege is a poison when you're born swimming in it. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not asking for mercy. Catherine interrupted. I'm asking for understanding. My husband died with terrible guilt. He left Richard a letter. I read it. She paused, measuring Amara carefully. It changes everything you think you know about your family and mine. Amara's heart quickened. What are you talking about? Catherine pulled an envelope from her coat. Edmund confessed something he did in 1975. A theft. From a black inventor named James Thompson. The world tilted. That was my grandfather's name. Amara sat in Catherine's limousine, rain hammering the roof, reading Edmund Caldwell's confession with shaking hands. The letter detailed everything. In 1975, Edmund worked at a patent firm. A brilliant black inventor named James Thompson submitted revolutionary designs for semiconductor technology. Edmund saw genius, an opportunity. He manipulated paperwork, filed patents under shell companies, and built his fortune on stolen innovation. James Thompson fought for years, but no lawyer would take his case. He died broke in 1982, broken by injustice. My grandmother never told me, Amara whispered. She raised me on her own, worked 3 jobs. She never spoke about him except to say he was brilliant and the world wasn't ready for his gifts. Catherine wiped her eyes. Edmund wanted to make it right. He kept everything, the original designs, the prototypes, documentation. He planned to tell Richard, to have him return everything to your family. But pride and shame kept him silent until it was too late. Amara's hands crumpled the letter. Rage and grief collided in her chest. Everything she'd built, every dollar she'd earned through her own brilliance, and it stood on the grave of her grandfather's stolen dreams. She looked at Catherine. Where is everything? The prototypes? The documents? At the estate. I'll show you. Amara's decision crystallized. This wasn't just about Richard anymore. This was ancestral. Amara tore through her grandmother's belongings that night in her penthouse. Boxes she'd kept sealed since Esther died 3 years ago. She found them in a leather case hidden beneath old quilts. Documents. Legal letters. Rejection notices from law firms. Her grandfather's journal. Pages yellowed with age and grief. Maya found her at dawn, surrounded by papers, eyes swollen from crying. He tried everything, Amara said, holding up a letter dated 1978. He wrote to the patent office, to congressmen, to newspapers. Nobody listened. They called him delusional. One lawyer said he should be grateful anyone found his primitive ideas useful. She opened the journal to the last entry, dated March 1982, 2 weeks before James Thompson died. If anyone finds this, know that I forgive whoever took my work. Bitterness only steals your future. I pray my granddaughter grows up free from this burden. Let her build her own legacy, not spend her life avenging mine. Amara pressed the journal to her chest, sobbing. Her grandfather had chosen forgiveness, had wanted freedom for her. But could she do the same? Her phone rang. David Chun. Amara, the board meets tomorrow. They're voting on our offer. She wiped her tears. I'm ready. Can we just pause for a second? Amara just discovered her entire family history was built on stolen dreams. If that doesn't hit you deep, I don't know what will. This is the kind of story that deserves to be heard by everyone. So if you're still here, if you're feeling this, smash that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to understand how deep injustice really goes, and how powerful rising above it can be. Drop a comment if this story is making you feel something real. I'm reading all of them. The Caldwell Biotech boardroom filled with tension. 12 board members, Richard, and the consortium's lawyers. Amara sat at the far end of the table, composed and devastating in a navy suit. Richard looked hollow. His father's funeral was yesterday. Today his career was being executed. Amara's lead attorney presented the offer formally. $85 million for core technology assets and intellectual property. The consortium assumes operational control. Existing employees retain positions with improved benefits. A board member interrupted. And the condition? Richard Caldwell resigns immediately with 0 severance and forfeiture of all stock options. Richard's voice cracked. You're leaving me with nothing. Amara spoke for the first time, her voice calm and surgical. You'll have exactly what you left my grandfather with. Nothing but the knowledge that someone more powerful decided you didn't deserve what you built. The room went silent. All those in favor, the board chairman asked. 8 hands rose. Opposed? Richard's hand stood alone. The motion passes. Mr. Caldwell, please collect your personal items. Security will escort you out. Richard stood on shaking legs. He looked at Amara across the table. I'm sorry. For what I did. For everything. Amara said nothing. She simply watched him leave. Richard's fall was spectacular and public. Wall Street Journal ran the story. Business Insider analyzed his failures. Twitter dissected his arrogance. His social circle vanished overnight. Suddenly busy, calls unreturned, invitations withdrawn. His wife Sloane filed for divorce, taking their Hamptons house in the settlement. Richard moved into a modest apartment in Queens, managing his family's small estate business. From corner offices to rental properties. From power lunches to lonely dinners. But something unexpected happened in the quiet humiliation. For the first time in his life, Richard was invisible. He rode the subway, waited in lines, watched people not see him, not care about his presence. He understood what he'd done to Amara. Late one night, he sat at his small kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not from a lawyer, not asking for anything, just truth. He told her everything he'd learned. About privilege. About racism he'd perpetuated unconsciously and consciously. About the casual cruelty of assumptions. About his father's theft and the generational theft of dignity from people like her grandfather. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just wanted her to know he finally understood. He mailed it, not expecting a response. 3 days later, his phone rang from an unknown number. This is Amara Thompson. Richard's heart stopped. Ms. Thompson, I didn't think you'd call. I almost didn't. Her voice was unreadable. Your letter. It was different from your voicemails. I meant every word. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know I finally see what I couldn't before. Silence stretched between them. Your father stole from my grandfather, Amara said quietly. Built his empire on theft. You inherited that empire and treated me like I was invisible. Like I was nothing. I know. My grandfather died broken. My grandmother worked herself to exhaustion. I built everything from their sacrifice, and you tried to make me feel small. I know, Richard whispered. And I'm so sorry. More silence. There's a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Corner of Nostrand and Park, Amara said. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Come alone. I'll be there. Richard, she added, I haven't decided if I'm meeting you to tell you I forgive you or to tell you to your face exactly what you destroyed. But you'll show up anyway, won't you? Yes. She hung up. Richard sat in his empty apartment, hands shaking, wondering if redemption was even possible. The coffee shop was small, worn, nothing like the places Richard used to frequent. Amara sat by the window, 2 cups already on the table. Richard entered nervous, humbled, barely recognizable from the man at the plaza. They sat in heavy silence. My grandmother used to bring me here, Amara finally said. After church on Sundays. She'd drink terrible coffee and tell me I could be anything I wanted. Richard nodded, not sure if he should speak. She never told me about my grandfather's stolen work. She wanted me free from that bitterness. Amara's eyes met his. But Catherine showed me everything. Your father's confession. The theft. The deliberate destruction of a black man's legacy. I didn't know, Richard said. But I should have. I should have questioned where our wealth came from. I should have questioned my assumptions about people. About you. Why didn't you shake my hand? Amara asked directly. Tell me the truth. Richard's face flushed with shame. Because I saw a black woman and assumed you couldn't possibly be important. I saw your dress, your face, and my brain filled in a story that fit my prejudices. Say it clearly. I'm racist. I was raised in it, soaked in it, benefited from it. And I hurt you because of it. Amara sipped her coffee, measuring him. What do you want from this meeting? She asked. Nothing, Richard said. Just to say I understand now. And to ask if there's any way I can help make things right for your grandfather's memory. Amara studied Richard for a long moment, then pulled out a folder. I've been thinking about this since I found my grandfather's journal. Revenge isn't enough. Destroying you accomplished nothing except evening a score. She slid papers across the table. The James Thompson Innovation Fund. $50 million dedicated to supporting Black inventors and entrepreneurs whose ideas were stolen, overlooked, or underfunded. Richard examined the proposal, tears forming. This is beautiful. I'm contributing $30 million from my own wealth, Amara continued. I want you to liquidate your remaining assets and contribute $20 million. Then I want you to work for the fund. No salary, just service. You want me to help? I want you to spend the rest of your life making sure what happened to my grandfather never happens to anyone else. Can you do that? Richard's voice broke. Yes, absolutely yes. 3 months later, they announced the fund publicly. The press conference was packed. Cameras flashed as Amara and Richard stood together, an unlikely partnership built on pain and purpose. A young Black woman in the audience raised her hand. Miss Thompson, you saved my company last year when no one else would invest. I'm here because of you. Amara saw herself at 19 in this woman's hopeful eyes. This was bigger than revenge. This was legacy. The James Thompson Innovation Fund transformed lives. In its first year, it funded 47 entrepreneurs. Revolutionary ideas that traditional investors had dismissed suddenly had capital, mentorship, and a chance to bloom. Amara personally mentored 12 founders, sharing the wisdom her grandmother had given her. Richard volunteered 40 hours a week, learning humility in ways his privileged life never taught him. He listened more than he spoke. He questioned his assumptions. He became genuinely useful. The media covered their partnership as redemption, but it was more complex than that. Amara hadn't fully forgiven Richard. Forgiveness wasn't simple or quick, but she'd chosen something harder, transformation over destruction. One evening, after a particularly successful pitch day, Richard approached Amara hesitantly. My mother wants to see you. She says there's something else at the estate you need to see. Amara tensed. What else could there be? I don't know, but she sounded emotional. The next day, Amara drove to the Caldwell estate in Connecticut. Catherine waited at the door, aged but dignified. Thank you for coming. Follow me. She led Amara to a storage room filled with dust-covered boxes. Edmund kept everything. He couldn't bring himself to destroy the evidence of his crime. Catherine opened a crate. Inside were prototypes, original designs, her grandfather's handwriting on technical drawings. Amara's breath caught. These are his actual prototypes. And this, Catherine handed her a leather journal, is what he wrote. Amara sat on the floor of the storage room, surrounded by her grandfather's stolen legacy, reading his journal with tears streaming down her face. Page after page of brilliant ideas, detailed sketches, and personal reflections. Then she reached the final entry, dated 2 weeks before James Thompson died. March 15, 1982. The lawyers won't help. The courts won't listen. I'm tired, and I'm sick, and I'm running out of fight. But I need whoever finds this to know. I forgive whoever took my work. I do. Because bitterness is a prison, and I won't let them steal my soul too. They took my patents, my money, my recognition. But they can't take my peace unless I give it to them. I pray my granddaughter, if I ever have one, grows up free. Free from this burden. Free from anger that eats you alive. Let her build her own legacy, not spend her life avenging mine. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the only way forward. Amara closed the journal, pressing it against her heart. Her grandfather had chosen freedom over bitterness. Had wanted that for her. Catherine knelt beside her. What will you do with all this? Amara looked at the prototypes, the proof of theft, the evidence of injustice. I'm going to make sure everyone knows his name. Not as a victim, as a genius. 6 months later, the Smithsonian unveiled a new permanent exhibition, James Thompson, the Invisible Innovator. His prototypes, his designs, his story, finally given the recognition stolen from him 40 years ago. Amara stood at the opening, surrounded by press, historians, and technology leaders. Richard stood to the side, not seeking attention, just bearing witness. A journalist approached Amara. Miss Thompson, do you forgive Richard Caldwell for what he did to you? Do you forgive his family for what they did to yours? The room went silent. Cameras focused. Everyone waited for her answer. Amara took a breath, feeling her grandfather's journal in her bag, her grandmother's prayers in her heart. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about refusing to let their actions define your future. Richard hurt me. His family stole from mine. Those are facts. But if I spend my life consumed by that pain, then the theft continues. They don't just steal your past, they steal your future too. She paused, choosing her words carefully. So yes, I forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Because my grandfather wanted me free. And because I won't let hate steal one more thing from my family. The room erupted in applause. That evening, Amara visited her grandmother's grave in Brooklyn. She placed flowers on the headstone and sat in the grass as the sun set. We did it, Grandma. Grandpa's name is in the Smithsonian. We're free. 5 years passed. The James Thompson Innovation Fund had funded 200 companies. 7 had gone public. Thousands of jobs were created. Innovations that would have died in obscurity were now changing industries. Amara's wealth doubled, but she measured success differently now. She measured it in the young black girl who approached her at a conference, holding her daughter's hand, saying, "I'm an engineer because of you." She measured it in the inventor who'd been rejected 40 times before her fund believed in him. Richard ran a nonprofit teaching implicit bias training to corporate boards. He'd never have his old life back, and he'd told Amara once, quietly, that he was grateful for that. "I was building a legacy of harm," he'd said. "Now maybe I can build something worth leaving behind." They weren't friends exactly. The wound was too deep for that. But they'd become partners in purpose, two people who'd learned something hard and necessary about justice, redemption, and the long road between them. Amara was invited to keynote the same summit where Richard had refused her handshake 5 years ago. She almost declined, but then she thought about all the young people who needed to hear this story. The ballroom was packed. Front rows filled with young black and brown faces, entrepreneurs, students, dreamers. Amara took the stage. 5 years ago, I stood in this exact room, Amara began, her voice filling the plaza ballroom. I extended my hand to a CEO, and he refused to shake it. He looked at me and saw only my skin color, my gender. He assumed I was the help. The audience leaned forward, captivated. He didn't know I was worth hundreds of millions. But that's not the point. The point is, my worth shouldn't have mattered. I deserved basic human dignity, whether I had $10 or 10 billion. She paused, scanning the young faces in the front row. That man's father stole my grandfather's innovations and built an empire on theft. For 40 years, my family's genius was erased, invisible, forgotten. Sound familiar? Heads nodded throughout the room. So I had a choice. Destroy them and walk away satisfied. Or transform the pain into something bigger than revenge. She smiled softly. My grandfather left me a gift in his journal. He chose forgiveness when he had every right to choose bitterness. He chose my freedom over his pain. Amara's voice grew stronger. I'm not saying forgive everyone everything. I'm saying don't let other people's cruelty steal your future. They already took enough. She extended her hand toward the audience. My grandfather was brilliant. My grandmother was resilient. And I'm standing here, not because someone finally shook my hand, but because I never needed their hand to rise. I had my ancestors' prayers, my own unshakable belief, and the knowledge that I belong anywhere I choose to stand. The room erupted in standing ovation. After the speech, the young woman from the fund's first pitch day approached with a teenager. "Ms. Thompson, this is my daughter, Zara. She wants to be an engineer." Amara knelt down. "Then you will be. What are you going to build?" Zara's eyes shone. "Something that helps people. Like you." Amara pulled out her business card and wrote her personal email on the back. "When you're ready, reach out. The fund will be waiting." That night, Amara stood on her penthouse balcony, watching the city lights sparkle like scattered diamonds. Her phone showed news alerts about her speech going viral. But she wasn't looking at her phone. She was looking at the sky, thinking about her grandfather James, her grandmother Esther, and all the invisible people whose brilliance built the world without recognition. "They tried to make us invisible," she whispered to the stars. "Instead, we became unforgettable. Not through revenge, through resilience. Not by destroying, but by building." That was the power they could never take away. The power to transform pain into purpose and injustice into legacy. Amara closed her eyes and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "Thank you for teaching me how to be human." She smiled and typed back, "Thank you for learning." Below her, the city hummed with millions of stories, some tragic, some triumphant, all interconnected. Somewhere out there, another young person was extending their hand, hoping to be seen. And because of what Amara built, maybe this time, someone would shake it.